Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back. It's Recovery Sort Of. I'm Jason. I'm a guy who does not actually work in the treatment field.
And I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
And today we're here with Basil. Hey, Basil, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. So we brought Basil on because we want to talk about the idea of getting involved in the work of treatment centers while also being in recovery and how difficult that can be and what challenges it presents. And I think more and more people in recovery are finding their way into this field. And like, we want to kind of have a guide of like, hey, what's some things from an experienced person that can help with that? When I came into recovery, I remember I probably had like 2 months. I don't know, maybe I had 10 days, who knows? But I remember telling my sponsor, I was like, man, I want to be an addictions counselor, right? I want to help people. And he kind of laughed at me and poo-pooed on my dreams. He was like, yeah, everybody wants to do that in their first 6 months. Like, get over it, do something else, don't fall into that trap. And then as I stayed around longer, there was very much this idea that I got, and it's not an 12-step idea, but this idea from the people in the program that if you go to work in addictions counseling or in treatment centers or anything like that, what you're going to do is confuse your recovery and your work is going to become what you think your recovery is, and you're going to stop doing your recovery practices and you're going to use. And I guess there had been instances of this and maybe many instances of this at some point. And granted, this was quite a while ago, but I think now there's a fuck ton of 12-step people in recovery. Like, I don't think there's a shortage of us. I think, we do make good helpers, and the peer movement has involved us even more and made it more accessible for people to get into. So I think that thinking has changed, and yet I still do think, from what I've seen at least, it does create some unique challenges. And so Basil's here because he's going to be our resident expert today, and I'm going to let Basil take over and tell us a little bit about his story that has him qualified to talk about this today.
Thanks for having me. So I don't know if I'm an expert by any means, but I got into this industry. First off, I'm somebody in long-term recovery. I got clean back in 2008. So I'm coming up on 13 years. I've always been involved in 12-step fellowship. I've always had a sponsor, went to meetings, did, all those things that, I've always followed like that path of recovery. So I'm somebody who's, gotten connected throughout the great state of Maryland, like all over, just like 12-stepping, like all over the state. So, that's where I originally started with, this entire like kind of I would call it space. And then I was a construction worker for 9 years. Wow. I did construction. I worked in a union out of DC, and I had a great life. Like I went through an apprenticeship. I did well for myself. I bought a house. I did all the things that we look to do to become like productive members of society. When I first got into recovery, I didn't have anything, so it was like a total transformation of my life in that time. And then somebody approached me that I was actually playing softball with. It's funny enough. Like I once wanted to be a counselor, but when I was working in the union, we made good money. They were like, hey, I was like, man, maybe I want to become a counselor. And I saw all the student loan that I was going to accrue. I saw that I would actually start off maybe making like half of what I was making working in the sheet metal union. I had already, established a life for myself where like I needed to make a certain amount of money to provide and, continue to have the things that I wanted. So somebody approached me at a softball game that I've been playing softball since I got clean. You can have fun in recovery, but Um, so he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about working in treatment?" And I was like, "I did actually think about working in treatment, but I need to make more money than I can make, being a therapist." And the position was actually for business development. Some people call it community outreach. They call it treatment advocates. Essentially, it's marketing for a treatment center. So um, in the 12-step fellowships, sometimes this can be like it's a very like it's like a line, it's like a certain like area of the industry where like if you're not very careful and you don't understand like recovery and treatment are two totally separate things, it can damage people. So I got into the industry. I started doing marketing, and essentially my job was to get people into treatment. So I started just marketing and going out, and really marketing is more of like a sales term, and it's like I felt like I wasn't really like selling people on coming to treatment. I was more so would wake up every morning and think I need to try to put as many people in treatment as possible, and like that's my job. So like that's how I approached the job. And of course, like it's a production like area of the industry, so if you're going out there and you're not producing, what they call clients, right? You're not doing a good job, and like that's the way that, those are the terms that would be made like in a business setting. But like I just think like if I'm not getting more people help, then I'm not doing a good job of my job, so it was like when I got into the industry, it was more so like it was a business, but it was a business of helping people. But when I first got clean, there was a guy that worked at the halfway house that I lived at. And, some people just have misinformation that like, their job can be service work or like, some type of like selflessness, you know what I mean? And it's like, he told me that anything that you make a dollar for takes the spirit of service out of what you're doing. And I didn't really understand that until I was working at that same halfway house, and I was a weekend manager making $100 a weekend, right? And I wasn't doing it for the money, like I was doing it because I wanted to like give back to the place that like helped, save my life. But there came a time where I was like, I wish I was making $125 a weekend. I was like, this just isn't enough money for my time, and like all the selflessness and wanting to give back for some reason just like kind of like was like going out the window. So it's been a crazy ride since I've been working in treatment. I've only been working in treatment for 3 years. My previous employer, I actually aspired to want to open up my own treatment center, so I did that back July of last year. So we've been open now for a little bit over a year, and we're doing well. But now I don't really have a whole lot of client interaction. I more so help bring the people in that are going to help the clients that are in our center. So I'm more so of like I guess you would call it a delegator or a navigator, of sorts, like just making sure that we're bringing good people in that are in the industry for the right reason. They do say if you're in the industry and you don't want to help people anymore, you probably should get out of the industry. So that's my qualification, and I probably ranted a little bit, but
nah, that's
yeah.
great. That's great. All I could think when you were talking about what you termed marketing was somebody had put me onto some movie in Florida, or the movie's not in Florida, but a movie about guys in Florida who were like chasing down bodies for the treatment centers, and like they got bonuses or something. Apparently, I didn't know much about it, but I didn't watch the movie either. Obviously, I didn't take that recommendation. But was it like that? Like, do you really like chase down people to kind of get them in treatment?
No, I mean, so in Florida, from what I'm told, I mean, the only time I've ever been to Florida is for vacation. So I've never like worked there or anything like that. From what I'm told, I mean, like I said, I have never had any dealings of like with that like space of like patient brokering or anything like that. But patient brokering is also a very broad term, like there's different like variations of patient brokering, that take place in the industry. But what was happening on that movie, I believe I heard about the movie, but they were like paying for clients, so, if I brought a client into a treatment center, they would give me X amount of dollars for bringing that client in, which is essentially you're like selling people, I guess. That would kind of like be the way that it is. But, just from what I've told, like they had like young kids down there that were 18, 19, 20 years old, and they were doing this and they were all making a bunch of money. It was just like crazy, like what was going on down there. But I've never gotten paid nothing but a salary, so that's the only thing that I've ever experienced like in this industry, but I have heard about it. So it's definitely like the dark side of treatment.
Well, and it's tricky to think about because, like, on one hand, okay, maybe this does seem like a shady practice, right? And on the other hand, it's like, is this the incentive we need to try to get more? Like, if you get somebody into treatment and you got paid $2,000, I'm making all this up, right? But if you did, and that person ended up like with a better life and not addicted to drugs and not homeless, like, was there a downside to that, right? If that's what incentive, like, I don't know. Like, I could see how it could be shady, but still be positive.
Yeah, the downside would be bending corners to do that, So like they supposedly were like giving people drugs, people that didn't really have drug problems, they were sending to these places, So once you start attaching money to like a person, that's when, ethics and, morals and values come into play, where it's like, people aren't like genuinely like getting everybody into treatment that needs to get into treatment, or they're cutting corners in order to get that $2,000, So it's like, it can really just, it can take people to a dark place, especially when most people that are doing marketing are like people that are in recovery, So when you start like putting people like in recovery and situations like that, I just think that it's just like bad all the way around. I think if somebody gets a salary, you get a reasonable salary that, you can provide for your family. And, if you do better, you can get, of course, raises to that salary, like over time. But, I don't think we're not selling cars, so it's like, it's just it's a very delicate area of the industry. And I've heard in other states, they still give like bonuses and things like that. But in the state of Maryland, as far as I know, you're not allowed to give any type of like bonuses or, incentives to like get people into treatment.
Well, and if you have $1,000 bonus to give because somebody came into treatment, why not pay their way through their recovery house after they finish your program, right? Like, why not use that money to further their course?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's such a, like, I've learned over time, like working in business development and owning a treatment center now, it's a business, so it's like, you cannot ever be mad at people for approaching it like a business, but the best businesses that are in treatment are ones where people get help, so right. If somebody is not getting help, your business model is it's no good, and the certain treatment centers are different. Like at my treatment center, if somebody comes in and, they, for whatever reason, they don't have any insurance, they can't get state insurance, maybe they're out of state resident, and then they're unable to apply for like Maryland Medicaid or something like that, we'll scholarship those clients, so we'll just do like free treatment. And this isn't for everybody, what I mean? I'm not saying that I'm like out here like, like the second coming of Christ or anything like that, but, we try to help when we can, and there's other businesses where if you don't have insurance, you can't pay, you can't stay, which is okay. Like I can't sit here and be like, these are bad people, because they're approaching the business in a different manner, so it's really taking the recovery out of the business is what people have problems with, so if you have a therapist and they think that their job is their service work or they're like giving back, sure, like their job is to help people, but from a recovery standpoint, they would be in a very bad place in my mind.
That's interesting. I'd actually argue that with you, but maybe we'll get to that later.
Okay.
So when you were finding people that needed treatment, right, which seems like it could be an idealistic thing from your standpoint, like, man, I'm trying to help people get into treatment, and also could, from maybe somebody else that's looking at it more like just a job, and they're saying, oh man, I need to find people so I can get paid to get them into treatment. Like, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, right? No judgment here, but
no, you're fine.
were you coming across people that were coming to meetings that were still using that you were like, man, I know a place that can help? Or like, how do you navigate that without, I guess, messing up the way you feel about how you're practicing principles around your 12-step program, right? Are you like just not forceful about it? Like, hey, this is an option if you're interested, or what ways did you keep that separate and okay for yourself?
So I never, when I share in a meeting, or if am I sharing at a meeting, or if I'm at a meeting, I'll never share what I do for a living. So I'll never say like, I'm a marketer for a treatment center. So like, if you know anybody that needs to get into treatment, get my number after the meeting,
Right.
So and really like, I do that for myself, because like, if I don't have separation between like my job and my recovery, like I'm in a bad place. If I'm preying on meetings to like find people to get into treatment, that's when like ethically and like, just morally, it becomes like a very sticky situation. But most people just knew what I did for a living just because like, we're Facebook friends, we're friends. They know that, I'm a marketer. I'm a treatment advocate. I help get people into treatment, so if one of their loved ones or, one of their friends or themselves, for instance, wanted to get into treatment, more likely they would reach out to me on social media. They would call my phone, and they'd be like, hey, Basil, I'm looking to get into treatment. Can you help me? And like, I would say, yeah, I can help you. But like where the thing comes in, where people don't really understand is that just because somebody calls your phone to get into treatment, not everybody can go to the treatment center that you work for. Right. So what happens is when your morals and your ethics and all that comes into play, is when you don't help the people that call your phone. Right. So I've helped more people that have called my phone get into other treatment centers than the one that I work for than the one that I work for. So like if you're gonna be able to like go home at night and feel okay about yourself, like you need to help everybody that calls your phone, whether they can go to the treatment center that you work for or not. And that's just the way that I've always approached it.
I spent some time working with a place that helps people find treatment centers or whatever kind of recovery version they're looking for. And I think one of the challenges for me, I don't know, I didn't struggle with it a lot, but I could see where some people would. And maybe I didn't struggle with it because I don't know a ton about these particular treatment centers that I was helping them get into. I feel like working for one specifically, you would definitely know a lot about what went on there. I feel like that could be a struggle if you, I don't know, knew the success rate was low or they had some practices that maybe didn't line up with 12-step, because a lot of treatment center practices aren't necessarily exactly what we talk about in our recovery program, right? Like that can get interesting, knowing you're sending somebody in or feeling like you're sending somebody in to maybe not the best information. Did you ever encounter any of that?
I tried. I would say 95% of the places that I've referred people, I've personally been, and I could say I've vetted the programs. I want to try to set. I would like by all means, like have I done that every single time? No, I haven't. Because sometimes like the window of opportunity for people to want to go into treatment is very small. So for me to be like, I've actually never been to these treatment centers that I can get you into right now, and like I'm not going to send you there because I would feel wrong not getting them in there and then getting a call the next day that like they overdosed and died, than just getting them in there and just doing my best essentially, right? But
Right.
like I want to send people to places that I would send my family members. Like that's the way that you have to when you're in marketing. Like if you're sending people places where you wouldn't feel comfortable sending one of your loved ones, that's when it can start weighing on you a little bit, and you're like, I'm sending people places that I wouldn't even send, you know, somebody I don't like. Because
Right. Right.
not all treatment centers are the same. And not to, I think there's more good treatment centers than bad treatment centers. I would like to believe that, but there's some places, and we're not even going to say bad treatment centers. I would say not good for that individual, right? So like if you've been doing this long enough, you should be able to have a conversation with somebody, figure out what their needs are, figure out what they're struggling with, and then make a decision on where to send them. Not just say like, hey, like, because it's not like a one size fits all. It's just not, So there might be somebody who is totally against 12 steps. They don't want 12 steps at all, right? Am I not going to help them because they don't want to they don't want to participate in 12 steps? Like now it's like now you have to like separate yourself out of a 12-step fellowship where we're taught like like this is what works for me. I know 100% I need 12 steps. I need the fellowship. Like that's the suit that I found that fits me, right? But from a treatment standpoint, somebody might be wanting to do more so like, one-on-one therapy, or they might, find music more therapeutic. Like I don't, I need to like figure out like what approach is this person trying to do? Because like I believe you have to meet people at the place where they're at. I can't try to like force feed something down somebody's throat. I need to put them in a place where they're hopefully going to succeed and give them the best opportunity to like, you know, get recovery.
Yeah. And I think there is a belief sometimes, at least in our area, like the sort of what I'll call the high dollar hoity toity, treatment center is the best option. And I don't know that that's always the case, as we've seen with individuals. And I think that's where the client brokering gets dangerous. It's like if you're getting incentivized to send someone to a place just because they're paying bonuses, that's different than trying to match someone up with the best treatment center available. I know around here there's a couple different treatment centers that offer different, like you said, different versions of, not versions of recovery, but different pathways of recovery. Some deal more with mental health issues. Some are better for that stuff. And being able, when someone comes in, to send them to the best possible treatment center is more important than the one that's offering the most benefits.
Correct. I believe that to be true as well, but not everybody that works in this space is in recovery, so their standpoint and their view, like you're somebody in long-term recovery, so is Jason, like we tend to view things maybe from a different telescope a little bit, where it's not all just like business, like, some people will approach it where there's tons of good treatment centers, right? I'm going to refer to the places that I work with. That's how they're going to approach it, so they're going to have this, big, like group of people that they refer to that are all good treatment centers, right? But they're not going to refer outside of that group of people because they don't work with those other people, so there is tons of like the business of treatment is so much different than like recovery. And I think that if people aren't educated on like the industry, then they're going to be, they're going to more than likely just have like a very shallow view on like what we do, because I've felt that before too, where people are like, oh man, you're just making money off the backs of addicts. Like I've heard that numerous times, that like I'm making money off the backs of addicts. And it's like, okay, would you rather somebody who's in recovery be working in the field and doing what we do, or would you rather have somebody who's not in recovery doing it, And that's just like a question that people need to ask themselves, is like, who do you feel more comfortable? I just want good people doing it at the end of the day, right? Like we want good ethical providers who are doing the right thing, and they're not cutting corners, they're not taking shortcuts. Like that's what we want.
I want to commend you for being able to do something that you said you were doing, which was, guiding people to the recovery method that seemed like they wanted, right? Or that was appropriate for them in talking with them. I get the idea, and this isn't a knock against the program, but I do feel like most of the people, including myself, that I've interacted with, over my time around the 12 steps, we even in ourselves, right? We get this idea of how it worked for us, and we take that to be how it has to work for everybody, right? Even down to the way like, well, I worked the 12 steps out of this book, and so if you're doing it that way, that is definitely not going to work for you, right? And so to be able to take that idea of open-mindedness, that there's a lot of paths to get to the same place, right? And take that into some things that maybe our program doesn't really look highly on, I think is incredible. Because it's something I'm like just starting to get better at times in my life. And I guess along with that statement, like, were you working at a place that provided medically assisted treatment methods when you were trying to get people in?
Yes, I was. So I worked for, a company that owned multiple treatment centers throughout the country. And yes, they provided MAT, they had MAT tracks. And when I first started in the industry, I felt some type of way about that, because I initially was working for an abstinence-based program, where you had to be off of everything. in order to come into the treatment center. And then that shifted as I had been in the industry for a little while. But I mean, the best way that I can break it down for people is like, I mean, I've been in recovery now for 12 years. So I feel like people experience trauma in recovery, especially with like the state of addiction and where things are now. And I would much rather have my dead friends on Suboxone than, in the cemetery, So it's like harm reduction only, like people don't really feel it unless they've experienced it, So it's like nobody's going to really understand harm reduction like we do, right? Because like y'all are both in recovery. I'm sure you would need more than two hands to count all the people that you've lost like in this process, right? So would you rather them be on Suboxone or be trying to like shove, abstinence down their throat? It's like I'm not going to, because this is the thing also. If I tell somebody you need to be abstinent and then they go out and they overdose and die, like, then what?
Right.
They wanted to be on Suboxone, Who am I to tell somebody what they should be doing with their lives and how they should be approaching like their recovery, I know what's worked for me and I always stand by that, which is abstinence. That's what's worked for me. And like, that's what is going to continue to work for me one day at a time. But I can't force that down somebody else's throat.
The longer you, I guess, stay around the 12-step world and have this more open mind to the harm reduction methods, right? Let me not say that. I'm going about this the wrong way. The longer I stay around this 12-step world with this open mind to the harm reduction methods, and I don't even like the terms harm reduction, just to these other recovery modalities, whatever we want to call it, right? The more I feel like a lot of the 12-step world and its population are, or just its language is like so shame-based and pushes people further away from the connection we need to find healing, right? And it's a struggle for me, honestly, at this point in my life I feel more disconnection from my program because I just feel like so many people are holding to these, I want to call them old ideals, but other ideals of things that I don't think are helping necessarily anymore. And that's become trickier for me. Have you found that in your exploration, because of your job, like of all this new information and these new statistics and new research and new science, have you found anything like that? Like, does it hurt you to go into a place that you feel maybe isn't helping people as much as we'd like?
I mean, I don't know. It's like, it just depends on who you're talking to. It's like, I don't want to generalize, these huge fellowships that have millions of people in them off of like, the words of like a couple people, like, I don't think that that's really fair to do. But yeah, I mean, it's like we hear those things a lot louder than we hear the good things, So it's like if somebody is running around and saying like, y'all are doing Suboxone, like that's crazy. You're basically just like a drug mill. You're feeding them drugs. You're not getting them any help. You're doing this, you're doing that. Like we're gonna hear that a lot louder than, hey, Jason, like thank you for helping my loved one. Like they're doing well today. Even if they are on Suboxone, they have a job. They're going to school. They're back with their children. They're reunited with their family. Things like that. That's gonna be a lot less loud than y'all are force feeding people Suboxone and you're doing this and you're doing that, So I've kind of had to like block it out a little bit, like with my own personal recovery. But then I also, I'll experience judgment just by being a treatment center owner, like at, just where I'm at, like in my life, like now that I own a treatment center. And I think those voices are a lot louder than the good ones too, of like, Basil, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's like, okay, well, we're also doing a whole lot of good in the community, I believe, so it's a very, I mean, we could probably sit there and talk about this for hours and hours, but hopefully our fellowships do get a little bit more open-minded to just like loving people with where they're at and like not using the shame-based language that we use as far as like, maintenance and like not clean and, shouldn't celebrate or, things like that, like we would have to really kind of like tread back and, you know, look at some things in our literature and, you know, like the things that, like, you know, we express from a 12-step fellowship standpoint is like the world is changing, you know? So it's like, as the world is changing, like we have to adapt, you know, like I think certain forms of MAT, there's more deeper conversations than others, you know, like they have Vivitrol now, you know, they have, Subutex, you know, they have a lot of different forms of MAT now. I mean, now we have medical marijuana, you know, that's like a whole entire other conversation that we have to have. But I don't feel comfortable telling people on what they should and shouldn't do. I don't like to do that. Like I'm not a professional, you know, like I'm not a medical professional, right? So I refuse to tell people what they need to do. Like all I can tell you is what's worked for me. And if that's not what you want to do, that's okay. You know, like you got to do what you got to do. But like, I would not tell people what they need to do.
Awesome. I think that's a very diplomatic answer, but also a good one. So tell us about your treatment center. Like what inspired you to open it? What's it like? What do you do there? What's going on?
So it's called Elevate Recovery Centers. It's located in Glen Burnie, Maryland, out here in Anne Arundel County. What inspired me to do it? Of course, like I was working for somebody, you know, so it was like, I mean, I think most people in their minds are like, they have like some type of like entrepreneurial spirit. They're like, hey, maybe one day I could do this or I could do that, you know? So, you know, it just started really weighing on my mind because the area that I live in, they don't really have any treatment centers, you know, and it's the biggest city in Anne Arundel County. It has one of the biggest opioid problems. So I saw the need for it in the community that I live in, which kind of like sparked my interest into pursuing it. And then, yeah, I mean, who doesn't, I mean, if you're somebody in recovery, like you kind of get the opportunity to have the autonomy on how you can build your program. So like that also was kind of attractive as well. And then just from a, you know, professional standpoint, you know, it's continuing to grow within the industry, you know, hopefully. But, you know, our treatment center, we do IOP, we do PHP, IOP, and OP, partial hospitalization program, intensive outpatient, and we do outpatient. And we also have our OMHC. So we're doing like true mental health. People who have like intense mental health issues, we can help as well. We have about 9 therapists. We have some social workers on our staff. We have addictions counselors. We have case managers. Like basically, like if people were going to start from us from our most intense program step down to our, you know, when they're, you know, about to step out of our program, we meet people where they're at. Typically, you know, people start off in our PHP program. They're just starting. We're trying to incorporate, you know, healthy habits like, you know, getting them to go to meetings, you know, them getting out and getting to the center every day. We're setting them up with a substance therapist and a mental health therapist. So, you know, they're starting to get like that, you know, outside of the fellowship help that, you know, a lot of us need, you know, like I think that's become like a new wave of things as well. It's like an extra layer on your recovery to be connected with a therapist. And it's actually what I believe is it's like a healthy habit, you know, to like go to your therapist to, you know, get that third party perspective, you know, that most of us need, you know, and they say anybody who's in this industry should have one. So that's what was told to me is that anybody who works in the industry should have one. So, and then, you know, they would step down from our partial hospitalization to our intensive outpatient. And then they would altogether, it's about 6 months. We're really just trying to like give them some healthy habits, as far as like, you know, I mean, I'm in a 12-step fellowship, right? So in a perfect world, we would lead them all to 12-step fellowships and they would all get sponsors and go to home group and, you know, do service work and things like that, you know, but really we're just trying to like the full picture is like to understand that like you can live a life clean and sober, you know, out here in the world and, you know, you can be happy, you know, without the use of drugs. I mean, that's really like what it boils down to. But like we do like yoga, we have vocational services where like we help them with like resume building, things like that. If they need food stamps, we'll help them apply for food stamps. We work with, you know, housing all over the county. So if somebody needs like housing, you know, we're able to kind of like navigate that for them and see like, hey, like, can we find somewhere that has funding? You know, can find somewhere that has funding for their housing, we're able to apply for funding, hopefully in turn get that funding for them. A lot of people that come to us are indigent. They have absolutely nothing, so that's been pretty cool to watch, like people's transformation of coming in with like nothing. We've only been open for a year, so we haven't been open for a super long time, but we have had the opportunity of watching people come in with nothing, get their start at our center, continue on, and like now they have their own place, they have a job, like they're involved in their recovery and they're doing the right thing. And that's just pretty cool to watch. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a quick snippet of our program. You're always welcome to come by and check us out too. You can meet all of our clinical team, and you can kind of see what we do.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit recovery organization made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, harm reduction and support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopemaryland.org and consider donating to our cause.
How do you handle, you had mentioned, I think before we started recording, that you recover in an environment where you run into people who have been in or are in your treatment center, or maybe even more close to home for you, since you're not really working one-on-one with them on a daily basis, is running into, employees in the recovery world. Like how tricky is it to navigate that?
It's a learning process. I'm just like learning how to deal with it now. But the cool thing about the area that I live in, I mean, I live probably 15 minutes from Baltimore City, and then like we're like 20 minutes from Annapolis. It's like you really can. I mean, they say your recovery is your responsibility, right? So I can go 30 minutes in like any direction and like be out of the area that I live in, and like I've always really like prided myself on being of service in the community that you live in. Like I believe that. I think that like if I was to move to Cecil County, that's where y'all are at, I think, right? Cecil County.
Yeah.
I should get a home group in Cecil County and I should be in service out there. Like that's what I've always believed, and that's just what's worked for me. But it has become a little difficult to navigate as far as like feeling and like not that it's any of anybody's fault, like it's just that's just the way that it kind of is, like I think that people should feel comfortable in the meetings that they're going to. Not that I feel like uncomfortable, but I'm still somebody in recovery. I still have all of my same like I have a lot of struggles, like I have things that I need to talk about and that I need to like get in touch with the group about, but you just have to be careful on like what you're putting out there in a meeting when you have clients and you have staff and things like that, so it's just I'm still learning. We can get back in like a year and I can tell you more about how I've navigated it.
Well, and I think that's part of the, I don't know that the world has gone wrong, but part of the tricky part about living in 2021, right? If you think about the idea of trying to run for president and how, the media outlets will scrape through or your opponents will scrape through your history or maybe what you're going through today and present that as like evidence of why you're not good enough or something like that. We live in this environment of like exceptional judgment and looking through people's discrete information for the little holes in their character. And like that's just really not a world that I think is a healthy way to participate in, right? If like God, I honestly like I'm like, okay, what if I run for president? Oh shit, they're gonna know that. Oh yeah, I don't know about that, right? Like I don't even know if I want them to know that, much less how they're gonna take it. But it's sad because why can't we live in a world where like Basil's my boss and he runs a treatment center and also struggles with relationship issues? Like why can't that be okay? Right? Like why can't it be okay that, oh shit, he fell short and stepped outside his relationship? I mean, that sucks but why do people need to be on these pedestals to be in positions of helpfulness in the world? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where recovery and the industry they bleed into each other, so you know, if I have, which I have had since I've opened, like personal struggles, you know, they're kind of like in it's like public knowledge, you know, it becomes like
Mm.
public knowledge within the fellowship. And then in turn it becomes public knowledge at my place of business, you know. So it's like that's where it just sucks the most, where it's like, dang, it's like, you know, it's like you get put on like the spotlight, where you feel like so much judgment, and like, you know, you could be doing so much good for so many people, you know, but like these couple little things that, you know, you struggle with, you know, you just feel like people are like talking about you. And it's like, I've always heard like I'm not that important, which, you know, I still believe that I'm really not that important to where everybody's sitting at home talking about basketball, you know. But when you want to help people, and then like when you know you're helping people, you know, and then like you're still catching like scrutiny of like, you know, people talking about you, whatever, like it can just affect you like on a more so of like a mental health standpoint, you know what I mean? So where it's like I need to really like rein it in, you know, and be like, okay, like my personal issues have been, you know, put into like a public space to where like that's not cool, you know, like regular people don't have to deal with that, you know, like I'm in NA, you know, so it's like I know hundreds of people in the fellowship, hundreds. Like there's tons of people that I know. So if like most people that work in the industry are in the fellowship, you know, so it's like if there's something that is like happening like in my personal life that I share, or that like whatever happens, and then like it bleeds over into my work life, like I just feel like that's not like atypical of like most people's lives, you know, so it's like
Right.
a different type of like dynamic that only people like us for the most part have to deal with, you know. Like if I'm a construction, if I own a construction company, you know, and I'm not in NA, right, and I something happens in my personal life, nobody hears about it, you know. Like there's not like a slew of people that are coming, you know, people that you barely know that are like, oh, I heard this happened to you in your life, you know. So it's
Mm.
just you have to just be very prepared for like what you're going to be going into, like once you go into it. It doesn't feel good.
I bet. I bet. Looking at it from so before I got involved anywhere in the helping people get into treatment and stuff, I think I kind of thought of, you know, we take this black and white thinking. Some of us do. I definitely do. I'm like, it's black and white, right? Everything's black and white. Treatment centers are evil. They're all about money. They're not really helping people. Their success rates are like 2%. You know, they tell you when you go there that 1 in 20 of you will make it, or whatever they say, or they used to say at least. And just thinking of that as like almost the enemy. And so it would have been easy to look at somebody in a meeting who owned a treatment center and say, oh, they're they're evil, right? They're just in it for the money. They don't practice principles. It's nothing, you know. I think you have a very, oh yeah, man, I think most places are helping people, and that's great, right? I'm usually like the pessimistic guy of the crew for sure. But is there anything you've run into operating a treatment center that you've been like, man, this doesn't feel like it's as good as I'd like it to be, or I do feel like we're failing here, that kind of rocks, I don't want to say rocks your recovery, but sort of, you know, affects you, and it feels like, damn, why can't we have a higher success rate, or what are we doing, and am I really doing enough good to justify this? Like, does that ever occur to you?
So, I mean, yeah, I'm always going to feel that way if somebody leaves us successfully and then they come back, you know, so like soon, you know, if they come back in a
Mm.
week or a couple of days, you know, like we've dealt with people that have successfully completed. And then, I mean, when you talk to them, you would have probably bet some money that they would do well, you know, when they left. And then, you know, you hear that they relapsed and they want to come back because they feel comfortable with us, you know, and it's like, I want to be able to, you know, we have a policy on that to where like we're not going to like be like the enabling parent, you know, to be like, oh yeah, just come back, it's going to all be well. And then also from an ethical standpoint, it's like, are we just going to just keep on coming, letting them come back so we can bill their insurance? Like, you know, that's essentially what we're doing at that point. If they're continuing to go back out, like they need to try something different. You know, like
Mm.
if our program, like we'll take somebody back, like, you know, once, maybe twice. But after that, like that's where like sometimes you have to draw the line. Is like, look, like this isn't right. Like we're accepting somebody who has been with us tons of times, right? What would be the right thing to do? The right thing would be to change something up for them and not let them come back and like send them somewhere else, you know? That would be the top one for me as far as like things that just don't feel right.
Gotcha.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, treatment is a business. I mean, we're in a capitalist society. We need money to operate. Businesses need money to do what they do. And I'm glad to hear someone pretty ethical's in the space, because if not, if there's a need, somebody will go out to fill that need. But I think like any business, like you hope that you're dealing with a business that's practicing morals and ethics and values, and I heard it actually from a guy that's a car salesman early in recovery. He's, I said, "Oh, how's that feel, being a car salesman with the negative sort of stereotype that comes with that?" And he said, "Look, I figured out as a car salesman, like taking the principles of the program and applying them in my job actually has what's made me so successful." He's like, I'm not dishonest with people. I don't try to bullshit them. I come in, I listen to what their needs are. I try to honestly fit them into what works for them. And, and sure, I make money at it, but I'm doing it with morals, ethics, and values. And he's been really, really successful. And I think that sounds pretty important in the treatment field too. It's like, if you have people that are doing this business with morals and ethics and values, hopefully that they learned in recovery, that's a much better approach than just some big financial investment firm out there doing it for what's going to make them the most money at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And like this business, you have to be careful. I just, that's the best way I can put it. Like me personally, I take my hands out of all like clinical things that are happening in our company. So like the best way I can explain it is like we have people come in, we do assessments on them. Typically like we'll do a phone assessment and then they're going to come in and do a real assessment, but they have to be accepted into our program. So you have some businesses where the business side is more involved in the clinical side and saying like they might not really be appropriate for our level of care, but we're going to accept them anyway. So I've given autonomy to my clinical director where I said, I don't want anything to do with, us accepting or not accepting people, because first off, I'm not a professional, right? So like I never went to school. I don't know, clinically what is best. Over time, I've learned a lot of like, things from the people that I work with, but me being the business owner, eventually, like, who knows? Maybe that might happen to me where I'd be like, this person really isn't appropriate for our program, but we'll accept them anyway because like we're a business, So it's like you have to like put like layers of like security for yourself in place to where you don't find yourself in that position to where it's like, am I accepting this person because like it's what's best for them, or am I doing it because this is what's best for our business?
I ran into a guy, it's been a while now, but he was pretty high up in some treatment center in the Baltimore area. And he I don't know, I ran into him at a meeting. He shared a great message. It was nice. But then I don't know, talking to some other people about him, apparently, I mean, I guess I don't really need to have any judgment of him, but I ended up with one through some of the stuff I heard. They talked about him having a pretty big ego, and like he was a little older and got with a really young woman and, carried himself in a certain kind of way that wasn't all that attractive, and over time I started to see that. How do you fight that ego kind of stuff? Because I mean, look, we can talk all the good shit we want about spiritual principles, but at the end of the day, like I have an ego that comes out here and there or feeds off of certain things in my life, and like I need to actively be aware that is a possibility, and what kind of things I need to do to keep myself grounded. How much of a struggle has that been for you?
So for me, and I understand what you're saying. Like I don't know who you're talking about, but it sounds to me like it's just one of those things. Like I working in the field now and being in the position, I don't know that I would believe that about somebody just by like the perception of like what I saw like at a meeting, or maybe the way that they talk or the way that they do things, because Um, I think sometimes the person doesn't change, the people around them change, and the way that they perceive somebody changes, maybe because of what they have or, what they do. So like that situation, I would probably just like, need to like see a little bit more like head on. But, for myself, oh, of course, like my ego can take hold of me any time of the day. Like, I mean, I'm, by nature, like I believe like my true nature is just like egotistical, self-righteous, arrogant, like all those things, right? But being in recovery now for 12 years, those are one of the things that have made me push people away the most, and it's like being in this position and being in this industry, like the last thing that I want, is to end up alone. And I think that that's like where you end up when you start practicing those characteristics. Not to say that my arrogance doesn't come out like at times where it's like, well, you don't know who I am, and all these things. But at the end of the day, somebody's position, or a title or whatever you want to call it, like it doesn't determine what kind of person they are. It also isn't going to determine their happiness. Life it's funny, because I mean, you have somebody that can make $10 an hour that is way happier than a person that's making $500,000 a year. So it's a very weird. It's a weird. Not weird. It's just I've definitely thought about that a lot, like since I've been doing what I'm doing now. And yeah, like I just don't want to be that person that like forgot where they came from and, thinks that they're better than somebody, like, cause I feel like that's easy to happen. It's like, hey, like I own a center. I have employees. I do this, I do that. And like, I'm that. There's nothing you can tell me, and I feel like that would be a very scary place to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm curious. You mentioned, sometimes maybe having to get out of your area to be able to share some things. And I'm wondering, when you own a business, I think it's almost natural that some of your friends or maybe not, somewhere between friends and acquaintances, people might want to work for you. That can get tricky, right? Like if things come up between that relationship, that work relationship bleeds over into recovery. Have you ever found yourself uncomfortable at meetings just because of maybe some of the things that have happened, or not wanting to go to meetings because of something like that?
Well, like I said, I think a lot of it is things that I make up in my mind. Maybe some of them may be true, maybe some of them aren't true, but yeah, sometimes I think that people think differently of me because of like what I do now, which I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want people to, view me differently because of what I do now for a living and, what I do, but yeah, like I felt like people like treat me different sometimes, or, I don't know. And it's like, it's the whole pedestal thing, and you've probably dealt with it before too, Jason, like just being around for a long time and people put you on this pedestal, and it's like really, like uh, there's no pedestal you could ever put me on. So I don't know. It's definitely been eye opening. It's been a little difficult at times, but I think I'm getting better with it like every day.
Would you say at this point, I know you're only a year in, but would you say at this point you feel like this is 100% the right path of action for you? You're super glad you did it. You think it's really a benefit to the community, and you're thrilled to be a part of something, even with some of these drawbacks of like maybe the way people view you in recovery and stuff. Like it's still, at the end of the day, you go to bed and you think, man, I really feel like I'm doing something that makes a difference in the life of my community.
I do. I mean, I feel like not only for our clients, but also for our employees. That's another thing too. Like I love helping like the people that come in and our clients and things like that, but I also like helping our employees, like I'm able to, like I'm an employer now. So I find a lot of joy out of watching our employees do well as well. So where they're buying homes or buying a vehicle or getting their kids things for Christmas or whatever that might be. So I do feel like as a whole, like this has been like a huge success, like not only for the community but for the people that work for us. But the struggles that I talk about, those are the only things that really I struggle with is my personal life as far as the way things have changed there. That's the biggest struggle. Like the business itself is great, like everything has went really well and we're continuing to grow and we're, helping people. But my struggles are with my recovery and how my business has bled over into that.
Gotcha. Hey, there's no treatment centers in Cecil County. When are you coming up here to open one?
We can set up a meeting and I can come out there and we can talk and we can see what we can do.
I got a feeling the county's going to have a lot of pushback.
Well, there's a lot of pushback out here too, but you just have to. People are always going to push back on this for some reason. That's another whole conversation, to be had. We're just kind of, we're stigmatized. It's just like a stigma on us. We're just like bad people sometimes and all this. Nobody wants it near their home until one of their kids dies from an overdose, or one of their loved ones. So that's how it is.
Yeah, I frequently hear we need these resources, but not in my backyard. That's always the way. So I guess to kind of wrap this up a little bit, what's the best practice or practices that people can either know going into working in the treatment field or can put into place as they evolve in their work in treatment field that can help them either keep their work and recovery separate or find a way to, nicely tie them in together? I'm guessing continuing to surround yourself with your close network that's not going to judge you and is going to keep you in a humble place is one of them. But what other stuff have you come across that's really worked for you to help you stay centered and balanced in your recovery as you, work in this treatment environment?
So for me, it's been really taking care of myself. It's been the biggest thing. It's just like you have to, if you don't take care of yourself, I just feel like it's never going to work, because it's such a, the industry is just such a, it can take a toll on you, so like if you're not taking care of yourself, you're definitely putting yourself in a really bad position to where it's not going to end good for you.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And, we live in a world that talks about self-care a lot. I think it's gotten a little pop cultured where we talk about like bubble baths and lighting candles and stuff. And not to say that can't be part of it, but I think a lot of my self-care is really work that I put in on a daily basis to keep me centered, right? It's that 24 minutes of meditation that I'm doing every morning. It's knowing to sit still and feel if going to this, birthday party is the right thing for me, or if I really need to sit home today and miss out on that birthday party because there's just some other stuff going on inside of me. And it's more the tough decision and work-like things actions I take, right? The self-reflection that we can do through the steps, or the calling somebody when I need to talk about something, or calling somebody to check on them. It's the things that seem time-consuming and work-like, but those investments in self-care have really been the best thing to help me stay centered as well. So I can't say enough about, that continued maintenance on our own self-care.
Yeah, I mean, just creative ways to, do like therapeutic things for yourself is all. I mean, I'm like restoring antique furniture. I do CrossFit, I golf, I just try to do these things that kind of like can like slow things down a little bit and just get me into a better mental space, because it might be the hardest thing ever to do this job when you're not in a good mental place. It's just, it doesn't contribute to you being in a better mental place,
Right. Absolutely. Well, Basil, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your experience with working in the treatment field. And man, going to put your business, if you want to mention the website and everything, I'm going to put that in the show notes for everybody to check out in case they're in the area, and or maybe if they're not in the area and they want to see how a good treatment center runs. But yeah, tell us like how to find the Elevate.
So yeah, we're on Facebook. We're Elevate Recovery Centers. You can look us up. We're also like and share, and then we're also on. We have a website. It's ElevateRecoveryCenterMD.com. You can look us up there. Our website is actually under construction right now, but we have job postings on there. We have descriptive portions of our program. Our staff is highlighted on there as well. And yeah, if you're ever in the area and you want to come check us out and meet the team, just call us and set it up, and we'll get it set up. But you should definitely come out, Jason, and check us out.
That's awesome. I'd love to.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being a ethical, healthy voice in the recovery community. We know we need it. We need ethical recovery centers out there. So keep taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I'll do that. And thanks for what y'all do too, man. This is like definitely it was weird when Jason reached out to me, because I was like, these are conversations that I have in my mind like all the time. And I'm like, I don't know who came up with like this topic or whatever, but it's definitely it was a very interesting topic to bring up.
Cool, man. Well, it's been great talking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
You too, Jason. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.